Hey, thanks for watching. If you're enjoying the content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. If you want me to play your deck on stream, feel free to reach out. Contact information in the description below. Also, I stream Legacy live almost every day at twitch.tv/ANZIDMTG. So come by and say hi. It's time for some Magic. Let's get to it.
The Invitational, the second.
Yeah, absolutely. So. I wasn't able to play in the last one. I was on vacation when it took place, but it was really good as far as like a content consuming experience. And I think that we're going to see hopefully the same thing today. I looked through some of the deck lists on MTG Melee, a lot of sweet lists out there for sure. Lot of, I think one of the nice things about, this sort of free tournament is that you're not punished for trying special cards that you really like. So I've definitely seen like a lot of like really cool fun of one-ups that hopefully will come into play.
Yeah, and my favorite part of this is, sure there's the cash prize and all that stuff, but A, it's good content, and B, if you win Honorag plays your deck, I hope. So if you play some really wacky out there stuff, or Death and Taxes, you guys will reward the general community with your victory. All right, so smooth transition here into Decklist. So run me through this. So I requested GRIXIS control. You told me when we're offline that you also wanted to see this deck. So, give me the rundown.
Yeah, this is a sweet one. It's basically, jamming as many cards as physically possible that are like pushed or talked about in the community, especially from Modern Horizons 2 and honorary Horizons 2 card Expressive Iteration. So, we're looking at what kind of started as like a blue-red tempo shell with Ragavan and Murktide and Expressive Iteration, and then obviously the Cantrip Cartel of Brainstorm Ponder, and then wanted some cards to help in the mirror, and so Baleful Strix is a good addition there because it's just like the inherent 2-for-1 advantage that you get from that card, and it blocks Murktide really well. And then also 4 Urza Sagas, which you see in some lists and not in others. But it is a very, slow and powerful option to kind of give you an edge, in these sort of blue matches, as well as just making, huge contract tokens against the control decks.
Yeah, and so facing the Grixis control deck, we see this Karn Echo deck, not Obs on Planeswalkers. I know people could say whatever they want to MTG Melee, but this is the deck that's been popping up a little bit more. Can you walk me through what's happening here?
Yeah, so this one is definitely trying to maximize Urza Saga, where, if we saw in the Grixis deck, it was just like a good card, but not entirely built around it. It had maybe like 3 or 4 artifacts to grab. This deck is, a ton of artifacts, a ton of fast mana, and then it's going to be trying to put like must answer threat after must answer threat onto the stack in the form of Karn or Mystic Forge, and then Defense Grid kind of acts as a pseudo must counter threat because it protects all your other ones as well. And then it does have the I win the game combo with the Mesmeric Orb plus Basalt Monolith as a way to kind of floop your library into your graveyard, and then combined with Mystic Forge, you are playing all the 0-mana artifacts off your library while that happens, and then eventually you put Echo into your yard, you make a bunch of mana again, and then you can kill with like a Karn for like a huge Walking Ballista or Mycos Inflatus.
Yeah, so for me, the card of the matchup that I think will be very interesting is Kolaghan's Command. So you're able to shatter, maybe make a discard in a key spot. So I'm interested if we'll see some of that action with some setup. But yeah, it's definitely scary, especially with Defense Grid against the Force of Will deck. So it's like, do I have to spend 2 cards to stop your two drop? That doesn't actually kill me, but it allows you to do all your stuff that does kill me.
No, I totally agree. I think we're going to see that tension of, do I 2-for-1 myself when I have these other answers in my deck, but it might give you a window to resolve something really strong.
Right, so it looks like the Grixis deck's on the play. Took a quick mulligan, just didn't have any red sources, and then from Eli Tucker's side, we see a nice screenshot that gives us some good analysis. But there's 2 defense grids up there. I think there was 1 or 2 lands. So, what do you think about this mulligan to 6 on the Grixis side?
I think that this one looks pretty good. Obviously, knowing the matchup makes it a lot different as to what you are looking for. And so I think Max would certainly prefer to have a Force of Will type effect in your hand. But in lieu of that, having Ragavan to start kind of pulling ahead on mana early and some cantrips can be nice. And then, of course, we see Murktide Regent as a way to quickly close out the game if he can stop Wombo's early threats.
Yeah, so what do you think about the decision to put Baleful Strix on the bottom versus Lightning Bolt?
That's really interesting to me, because there's no force effect in hand right now. If you draw one later, you might have wanted to use Strix to pitch to that sort of card.
Mhm.
However, Lightning Bolt does line up very well against Karn the Great Creator, and so I'm guessing that is something that Max was thinking about.
Oh wow, Lotus Petal on the top, off the top. So you make two treasures with that Ragavan hit.
Yeah, oh, it's if Lotus Petal is worth a card, Ragavan always draws a card, and now he's drawn two cards. Um,
So the major reason I could come up with a Lightning Bolt play is that you actually want a fast Murktide to be able to kill. So you're just going to go upstairs on turn 3 and then play Murktide next turn if you could, if you
that's
draw a
also a
fast
really
land.
good point. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That I don't
So
have counter magic, just kill him.
yeah, exactly. So we see the heavy Urza Saga draw. Now all these 0 mana artifacts are coming to play, and then unfortunately there's not a real payoff. Like you play Defense Grid, which would kind of bait the force effect if possible. We're gonna see a Lightning Bolt here instead. But what's kind of the plan from Eli's side?
Well, I think the plan is to run away with this construct tokens, where it's possible to make one now if you sack the Lion's Eye Diamond. Um, I'm not sure if there's other fast mana in the hand.
Right.
It looks like Eli's not choosing to go that route, just putting down the second defense grid.
So it seems
Um,
like we might have a good old-fashioned race of just constructs versus Murktide regions. And one thing that's interesting is that if you can chain enough cantrips, your Murktide almost like fireballs the other Murktide because just the way it's phrased, you get to exile more cards and put the counters on the one that's in play.
yeah, I completely agree. Modern Magic is past the point of having to play bad cards that synergize with each other. Now we play good cards that synergize with themselves. So, um, so Murktide pumping other Murktide, if we get to that stage of the game, will certainly be powerful.
So kicking off with a brainstorm, did not make a land drop yet, but found that Pluto Delta to make this a perfect brainstorm. What are you putting back here? It looks like 2 lands.
Yeah, it looks like Max put back Saga and I think one other land as well,
Hmm.
which makes sense. I think if you're playing as Murktide, Saga is a little bit, clunky in that aspect and doesn't put cards into your graveyard for like 3 turns. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah, it's a little bit interesting on my side to kick it off with the brainstorm before attacking with Ragavan. Maybe you can find something off the top that would change some of the math for you, but ultimately not really mattering here. Just following up with a Murktide region after another Lightning Bolt.
Yep. You know, you made a good point. You could wait to see if you hit anything with Ragavan first, but I think that Max felt that there weren't enough strong hits in the deck anyway that would be worth casting. Certainly not worth not deploying your 6/6 in this spot.
So here
And
we kind of have
yep.
some small gut check time for Eli. So it's like, okay, like maybe I have a turn or two, but I really need to get something going. But I have defense grids in play, and now this manifold key with the basalt monolith. So I have a lot of mana at my disposal. And then the Mystic Forge we know has to happen. You don't have 6 extra mana to pay, so we might just start seeing some going off here.
Yeah, and I really like this line here. Eli could have chosen to make a construct token before the Urza Saga left, but given that he has the second one in play already, I like just floating the mana, seeing what you get with Mystic Forge, and then if you need to, you can use this other saga to make a blocker for Ragavan.
Oh wow, finding a Karn off the top. So what can we get off the sideboard for that?
Yeah, very
Lion's Eye Diamond?
yeah, Lion's Eye Diamond to keep it going potentially. We'll see what Eli does go with here in a little bit.
Ensnaring Bridge can also be an option if you just have 3 left over and start to fizzle,
Yeah,
but I think you just
did
go
he
for the
get orb?
juggler.
Did he get orb for that? I couldn't quite tell which
Yeah,
one was picked
it
up.
was kind of fast for me, but I think it was orb. So
Yeah, and
then
that makes
now
sense with the monolith.
now
Yeah,
it's just
here where
over, right?
exactly. Yeah, now you can just you know, like we talked about in the intro, play all the zeros off the top of your deck, keep tapping and untapping monolith to sift through, and then eventually make enough mana to wheel this echo, find another Karn, and kill them with a huge walking ballista.
Right. So if you just take even just like a handful of Lion's Eye Diamonds, some Mox Opals, and Lotus Petals, and then you just flashback 1 Echo, you're already plus a bunch of mana. Then you just do it for every Echo you have, and then you can just Ballista kill. So it
Yeah,
could take a
exactly.
while. There might be other kills. It doesn't really matter, but especially with double defense grid in play, you just know you're good.
Yeah,
We're just here for the ride.
it makes it so much safer. You don't have to worry about if you give your opponent a good 7. And like you mentioned, you can just play out the lions of diamonds. You know, even if you had cards in hand, it's fine. You discard them because you want to shuffle the lions of diamonds back into your deck in the first place, so you can play them again, and you just make massive amounts of mana.
Yeah, if you're playing this deck at home, it's like depending on how good your computer is and graphics card and stuff. But in theory, time wise, just playing all the permanents might be a little bit faster. It's kind of unclear. Like if you just keep on clicking the top of your deck and you have enough mana to pay for everything, I think that might be the fastest. And you like play the Echo, but I don't really know. I haven't done it.
That's too deep in the weeds for me. I I'm not. I like to make sure I don't time out, but I've never gone that deep into how do I optimize my um, what's fastest to combo with.
Yeah, so if you're max, I'd probably just go out for a stretch, maybe use the bathroom, we'll let them expend some of their mental energy, though I could be ready for game two.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The blue players don't get to F6 that often, but when they can, it's a nice little bonus. That's why I don't mind playing against Teferi too much or Defense Grid or things like this, because it's like at least I get the F6 value.
For me, it's bad against Teferi because I still forget it sometimes, and then when I do, it's just like, oh man, I should have just left, but I didn't. Okay, so we're seeing just the full churning of the deck, and then maybe
Yeah, and there's no reason
one
not
Echo or
to,
something.
other than time constraints. And so if Eli feels like that's not an issue for him, then
Mhm.
totally fine to get down to 0 cards and get every single piece of mana before you wheel. Uh, and
Yep,
then we
and
do see Ballista and Karn in hand. I don't know if,
we're just at it again.
yeah, I don't know if he has quite enough mana to do everything now. Obviously, Ballista itself is at 18, I believe would be 36 mana. Um, Hard to say if it's quite enough. I think I see 17 floating right now, so we're gonna have to be here a little bit longer, but not too much longer.
Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta maximize your camera time, and I have respect for that. I mean,
Oh yeah, for
it's
sure.
as long as it's not the last match in the round, it just
Yeah,
doesn't
and also
matter.
if
It
you're
all
on
takes its time.
coverage, sorry, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off
you're
there,
good.
but
You're good.
if you're on coverage, and you're playing against a deck that isn't quite as popular, it can be nice to, um, show the people watching kind of how the deck wins for those who haven't seen it before.
Hmm. If I were Max, I would probably mulligan the 7, and maybe they get to mulligan to another 7.
Yeah, K Command seems a little slow here. There's already 2 defense grids in play, so it's not quite getting the job done for sure.
So one question is the decision to play snow-covered plains. So we didn't talk about it yet, but in the sideboard there's portable holes, which I don't know how common that's been nowadays. I know for a while it's just been mono blue Karn Echo, but with 2 snow-covered plains and 2 tundras, there's access to white on the board. How do you feel about that?
That's interesting. I also had not seen that development before. I think that, if you feel you have a good matchup versus someone like the Go Bigger blue decks and you're getting run over by either fast combo or, fast aggression, flashing white for some good removal makes sense to me. And then, you know, it is an artifact portable hole, so it's a low opportunity cost for it to just sit in your sideboard and Karn can get it in a pinch.
Right,
It'll be
yeah.
interesting to see if Eli decides to bring it in or not.
Yeah, so that's very interesting to me. So maybe if something like, I don't know, Thalia, Guardian of Thraben or something is like getting into the mix and is exactly why you can't win the game this turn, you can like Karn for that and then like be able to portable hole. And then by playing 3 in your sideboard, if you determine that that's a line that's reasonable to happen, you can actually just board in 2 of them and leave the third in the board as the artifact to find off of Karn. So that is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I do. That you bring up a good point that when you have a wish board, it can be difficult to know if you're supposed to side something in or not. But having the extra copies means that you can split the difference and bring in some to actually draw naturally, and then bring in some of your cards as well.
Yeah, and it turns out that Eli also has a source of plowshares on the board too. So just, splitting some of the difference maybe
That
in
one I
this
think comes in.
yeah. So in like the open decklist tournaments though, say if there's like a depths player or something like that, and you just have one source of plowshares on your board, that could be enough for you to buy enough time. You don't even need to have the Swords of Plowshares in your hand, and sometimes, they either just have to go for it, or maybe they're like, oh, if I just wait a little bit longer, it's a little bit better for me, and then that gains you extra percentage points. So I think it's really cool, instead of playing 4 portable holes, playing the 1 Swords of Plowshares.
Yeah, for people who follow me or like know like the types of decks I build, I play a ton of one-ofs, and
Mhm,
it's not necessarily optimal all the time, but one thing I do like about it is it's really hard to play around a one-of, like
mhm,
to the right amount. It's you're often going to either play around it too much for like the chance that they have it, or just not play around it at all, and then when they have it, it's a huge blowout. And so I like where Eli's head's at.
Yeah, I think that's complementing some of the decks that you choose to play by playing the power of blue and having a lot of cantrips as well,
Yes.
as we can see in this deck list. So I see a bunch of one-ofs in the sideboard here. Can you walk me through some sideboarding decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like Max has some tools for this matchup. Certainly, I like the Thought Seizes and the Forces. You just want to be as interactive as possible and kind of stop the initial barrage of threats from your opponent, and then hopefully, since they don't have the card selection that you do, hopefully they peter out a bit near the end. And then I also think that Pithing Needle and Alpine Moon can come in. Pithing Needle to name like Karn or something of that nature. Then Alpine Moon can hit Urza Saga, which can sometimes be troublesome for you. And then notably, it is only one-sided, so you don't have to worry about killing your own as well.
Nice. And let's see if we can get to the other deck lists to see how sideboarding works out there. There we go. So more one-ofs, but as you mentioned before, which sideboard. So most of it probably not coming in, but what do you think here?
Yeah, like we said, Wishboard means I think a lot of it is going to stay where it is. I do like your suggestion of bringing in the 2 portable holes, so you have the buffer to the early aggression as well as Swords to Plowshares. Um, And then it's possible we'll see Karn, Sign of Urza come in as well, but I think that's more slated towards the kind of like more control-y decks in the format. So we'll see what Eli decides to do, but I definitely like the cheap removal just to not get run over too quickly.
Yeah, current sign of Urza is kind of just like Urza Saga 5 and 6.
Yeah, um, I would agree with that.
But
Where
oh,
Oh,
sorry, you
sorry,
go.
go ahead. No, no, you
Um,
go.
so my question is like, I understand you can board in some reactive cards to stop Ragavan. As we saw, Ragavan, had a chance to make things go really out of control there. But what can you even board out in a deck like this to make room for those reactive cards?
Yeah, that is a good question. Uh, this is definitely a deck I would categorize as a combo deck, and so in general, you're not going to want to, overboard. Uh,
Hmm.
so it might just be like a little, shaving here and there. Maybe you like cut one key, cut one petal, things of this nature. Maybe you cut one Urza's Echo. Um,
Okay.
but like you said, it's probably going to be not too many cuts and not too many bring-ins.
Yeah, so one thing that's funny is you can board out, like, for instance, a voltaic key because they're bringing Pithing Needle potentially, so you want to have, mass diversification there.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, you want to do that 4-3 split instead of the 4-1 or 3-2 split. Sorry, instead
Yeah.
of 4-1 split. Um,
Yeah. Well,
and also, if you board it into this, put it in the sideboard, it's now a Karn target. So
ooh, yes. Yeah,
that can
that's a
also
great
come in
observation.
come in handy.
Yeah, I guess like one thing you could potentially do is maybe like trim like a lotus petal, like maybe something that's a little bit more temporary. I know it's like important for explosiveness, but maybe if this matchup's being like since they're on the play, they're gonna have a little bit more time to have forces and a little bit more setup. Like you really want the just like the clean defense grid 2-for-1s and stuff like that. Whereas like, okay, if I had to pedal to get this card into play and you counter it, now like card parity is kind of weird.
Yes, I would not want to cut like the big things like the defense grids or the Mystic Forges or the Karns
Hmm.
because, like you said, you just want to present these threats that have to be dealt with usually in a card disadvantageous way for the opponent.
Nice. So let's see. We see volcanic island. I'm guessing maybe it's cut off screen or something like that because this is like a 6. So
I
yeah,
see, I
maybe
see.
not. Yeah, we definitely have a card that's cut off on the screen, but I'm just gonna assume that this is a 6 or something like that.
Yeah, are we sure it's cut off? Because when
Oh, maybe not.
Max put the cards down, nothing new moved into view. Or maybe it's cut off too far to the left, is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
That's
I
what I
see.
mean. Whatever
Okay,
card they're casting is off screen. So it's the thoughts.
good point. Yes.
On a rug, you need to fix this.
Yeah,
Yeah, but no,
we'll
that's
yell
fine.
at her.
It's likely just the popping out of the graveyard, which is about one card wide, so it makes sense. So
Mhm.
Thoughtseize taking Lion's Eye Diamond. How do you feel about that?
That makes sense to me. It kind of strands the Echo in hand. Um, Although I guess it's a little bit unclear if Echo is even, you know, that bad for you, given that you're on a mulligan. But I think that it is kind of a large part of Eli's strategy, and the zero mana, like deck full of zero mana artifacts, is going to use that draw 7 better than you are. So I like the pick.
Right. So also just with the way the hand's situated right now, you don't actually have access to double blue, and Lion's Eye Diamond's the best way to like discard. So
Hmm.
you like imagine if like Defense Guard or Mystic Forge just played off the top, and you know there's still Lion's Eye Diamond in the hand because you didn't thought seize it. Then it's just like all the fast mana is kind of redundant. You just want to take some semblance of action, but cutting off the second blue, I think, is like or like the option to flashback it is like pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And we saw an interesting line from Eli on turn 1. They chose to play the key instead of the Grim Monolith.
Hmm.
Obviously, the thought here is that they want to play around days, and it makes a lot of sense to me given that uh, they don't have much to do right now anyway. And after we get out of like this, 1 or 2 turns, he's going to have all these monoliths to play with, and so it makes sense that he can basically play around days for the entire game, starting
Right.
in turn 1 here. So I like the decision.
Right. So then on turn two, for instance, if you care about your life total, you can play Tundra, Grimlock, Monolith, and then just untap it. Or yeah, and then or you could like tap it, play Basalt Monolith, and like untap. You could do whatever. You can figure it out later. Or you could play you could play Basalt Monolith with a second like Ancient Tomb, and it just depends on how quick you want to be versus like your draw steps and stuff like that. But I do like the observation that you can like make days dead, especially given an opponent that a mulligan and has no clock on you and needs force effects to like stop what you're doing long term. So it's just like, okay, I'm really just gonna pinch your overall like hard quality and quantity at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like we have drawn the Mystic Forge here, which, you know, you don't have the power of blue, as you say, but if you just fill your deck up with enough really powerful cards, you will just mathematically draw them to certain extents. And that's
Yeah,
what's happened
exactly.
here. Yeah.
It's kind of like a density thing ish. Like, oh, I have a handful of good cards, and I could get to see 30 cards a game, or all my cards are good, and I see 15 cards a game.
Yep. It kind of depends on how you want to swing it. But both lines have shown proven success.
Ooh, that's an interesting draw step.
That is an interesting draw step. I'm very interested to see with what Max decides to go with, because obviously they could, destroy a key or a monolith here and cut the opponent off a significant chunk of mana.
So one thing that's funny is how bad the discard part looks.
That is what I think we both came to that around the same time, where I was looking at the opponent's hand. It's like he knows about the echo, so it's like it makes sense that you wouldn't want to discard it, and Max just go with the Arctide here,
Hey,
which I like.
that card normally costs 2 mana. Why can't I portable hole it?
Yeah, it's not worth the design strain of how much mana you spent would be the converted mana cost, but it would
Maybe with
change a
new
lot.
arena stuff, right?
Yeah, it would certainly change a lot of interactions in the legacy format, given that this stealth creature is such a big part of it right now. But
Right.
yeah, here we see
So.
the. Oh, sorry, I was gonna say here we see the 2-turn clock from Max. I think he's deciding if he wants to dash rag or just make a construct token.
Mhm.
Um, the token seems better in my mind because it also gives you the option to hold up K command, and so we see
Right.
that that's what Max is going with.
Like if you didn't have Urza Saga, it also makes it slightly more like innocuous that you might not have Kolaghan's command because it makes sense that you would like just make a token. But if you just had 3 normal lands and pass, it's like wait, you had no cantrips and none of this other stuff. So imagine Portable Hole was like a form of action and then another action for the draw step, then like you could see like interesting just like posturing and stuff. Instead, we're seeing a Kolaghan's command here in response to the key. So I wonder if it's gonna be a shock and shatter.
Hmm. Well, certainly shatter. um, I think given that the opponent has no blue mana untapped right now, I kind of don't mind the discard mode, just because this is lethal anyway.
Well, right now it's Max's end step, so they would untap and then be able to.
Oh, sorry. My apologies. I thought we were on the opponent's turn, but yes, good point.
All good.
So yes, Max does go with your line of shock plus shatter.
Okay, and looks like being able to take down that lion's eye diamond actually did matter quite a bit. So you kind of strained 2 cards in the hand, even though you made your cold guns command slightly worse. We see Max bring into game 3 with some pretty tight play.
Yeah. Now I think that in a format as powerful as Legacy, the play draw is going to matter a lot, and certainly here where we have defense grid on one hand versus days on the other hand, I think that who gets to come out the gate swinging first is going to be a big part of this third game.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. So with the play draw dynamic, do you think there's an argument for the Karn Echo deck to actually board out some amount of portable holes and maybe Source of Plowshares and just board in more action? That way you can be shoving earlier?
It's close. I think that I probably would lean toward leaving in the removal spells, just because Eli probably already had this 4/4/4 for Karn, Force Forge for grid in anyway, and those are the important things. But I see your point of just like going fast. I think that because you have enough fast mana to play around days anyway, going fast doesn't have that much extra benefit, just because if you're going to get your stuff forced, it's going to get forced anyway. It's not like you can out-tempo the opponent in that aspect.
Right, so just the overall matchup dynamic. Like, we do see that sometimes where it's like, I want to be more consistent on the play because I have less cards like that I have access to. But just the overall matchup dynamic does not lend itself such that you can't have portable hole in your deck. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so we see the Alpine Moon. So can you tell the viewers how like Alpine Moon works with Urza Saga?
Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of people watching, this Legacy tournament are familiar with this, but for those who aren't yet, the way this works is that Urza Saga is both a saga and a land, and Alpine Moon removes like all the chapters off of Urza Saga, and so because it is a saga that sees itself with like no more chapters to complete, it thinks like, oh, I'm done doing my job. I'm gonna go to the graveyard now. It's kind of like the most succinct way I can explain it, and it's especially brutal here because both of Eli's lands were Urza Sagas, and so this other one is traps in the hand.
Yeah, if I give you a no-page book, did you finish it? Yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, I'm done.
And we call that
So
one Alpine
funny.
Moon.
Yeah, fun side story. When I was in elementary school, we had like reading challenges. We had to read a certain number of books, and I found a devious way to get around this where, like the R.L. Stein Goosebumps. There were some that were like choose your own adventures. Yeah. So I just found like a really short ending, read backwards, like 5-10 pages maximum, and said I finished the whole book, which was technically true. I got to the ending of a book, so
yeah.
Count it.
I read those a lot in high school. I think they're like pretty fun and it's like pretty elegant. I feel like some more modern video games can like kind of do that sort of thing, like it branches off and stuff like that. But it's cool to do in like a book medium way before its time.
I agree.
So here we see the one of Pithing Needle and the one of Alpine Moon. So all you here, just like all the one ofs. And we see that one naming Voltaic Key, just name the thing that's in play. And we see another Mox Opal drawn. So due to being legendary, you can't play both of those and start making mana. So not yet.
At least not until the first one makes mana,
yeah.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Even though Voltaic Key is often untapping a mana effect, it itself is not a mana effect. And so it is a valid name for Pithing Needle.
Yeah, I think one of the more interesting mana abilities related thing of our era is Deathrite Shaman, where it's like tap was not a mana ability, but it like made mana. So.
Yeah, because it targeted. I remember back in the day, that was an important thing.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so
still too good. Still downside, still too good. Amazing.
So here, we kind of see Eli in one of those spots that's just like, okay, how do I win this? I drew this Lion's Eye Diamond, which is one of my best draws, and you have 4 cards in hand, and my goal is really to resolve this Echo. How can I get that to happen? And Grim Monolith, it's like spicy enough to work with the Voltaic Key, and we still have Defense Grid, so we might be able to see enough action cobbled together. And it's kind of baby mark tide here, right? It's a 5/5, so we have some time. So very interesting sequencing here.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a really tough decision for Eli because he could potentially sack the diamond, pay for the days, and then have this monolith to, go along with the echo in the graveyard. Um, but he thinks it's better to, wait a turn. All he needs is one more mana source off the top of his deck, and he can play the defense grid and like hopefully have, some more protection for that sort of effect. Because if you do crack and your opponent has a force effect, the game does just kind of end. And we do see that Max has the force in hand, so Eli does decide to wait, which I like.
That's why you play the Portable Hole. It can't be used against you.
That too. It's only creatures, right? Or is it any permanent?
Oh wait, no, it can be used against you. You can choose the Lion's Eye Diamond, right?
Does it hit permanents or does it only hit
holes.
creatures?
Oh no.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually terrible for Eli. Okay. So I had to figure it all out. It's a slightly newer cards, but that's
Yeah, slightly newer, and that's so brutal here too because it takes off Metalcraft for the opal. So, and it's only a 2 of. It's only a 2 of.
That's why you had to board it out.
Of course, yeah. You should have thought about that. It's like because that is one way that you can sort of play around Ragavan a little bit is by having cards that aren't particularly effective to steal. But it just makes it so much more brutal when they get one of the few cards that is actually good for them to steal.
Yeah, I do like how both players play that game though. So Max, understood their role, presenting a fast clock, having some disruption, and I like how Eli picked their spot that turn and was just like, hey, if this goes 1 or 2 more turns, I actually have more threats, and you should theoretically have force effects with your 4 cards in hand. Sure, would there end up being Kolagon's command too? That ended up not mattering, but the power of the one-ofs being highly impactful in the double Urza Saga hand, like you're not gonna mulligan that hand, and it's only one Alpine Moon, so you just gotta go for it.
Yeah, with the open deck lists, I definitely agree with the keep. Even with closed deck lists, I agree with the keep. I think that is a very important takeaway when you're, if you're playing Magic and trying to improve is, you can look at how both players played the game, and I definitely agree with your assessment. I think that Eli, even though he ended up losing, played really well, had some tough decisions, and I think made the right one a lot of the time. So
yeah. So great match. So GRIXIS Control moves on to 2-0. A fan of both you, or you and I are both a fan of the strategy in this tournament, or maybe in general. But
yeah, I definitely love the control headers. I'm not sure how comfortable I feel calling a Ragavan Riptide deck control.
I just like Baleful Strix. Like
Baleful Strix.
There've been various times in Grixis Delver that I've main decked Baleful Strix. Just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna beat down. I have Cabal Therapy in my sideboard. Like, I need more sideboard slots. I can main deck this one. And
it does a little bit of everything.
Yeah, if you play against Miracles, sometimes they'll just like had to Swords of Plowshares it anyway. So I felt good about that. But